You're listening to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. This episode is free to access. This podcast is here for women who are in the middle of life, who are holding a lot and running on empty. They're ready for something to shift, but they don't know where to start. If that's you, start with my free 5-minute What's Next for Me check-in. It'll help you pinpoint what's keeping you stuck and what to focus on first. You'll find it in the show notes. Hello and welcome back to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. This episode is one that is always really popular. I've had so many messages lately. People saying, what have you been reading? What do you recommend? I always like what you recommend. Lots of friends have been getting in touch and people on socials just saying, what have you been up to? What have you been reading? Will you share it with us? So this episode is some of my favourite books from the last little while. There's also a few in here I didn't enjoy so much. Obviously, you may have very different opinions to me, but if you like some of the stuff that I've liked in the past, hopefully this episode will be useful to you. So the first book I'm going to start with is one that has been quite a controversy. There's been really mixed opinions about it. It's called Yesteryear by Caro Burke. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, I can't hold any of the books up because I've read them all on Kindle and a couple of them I listened to on audio. So Yesteryear by Caro Burke is her debut novel. She's not written a novel before as far as I can tell, and it has already been optioned by Anne Hathaway to make it into a film. There is a whole lot of talking about this book. It's essentially looking at the whole influencer tradwife concept. It's about a woman called Natalie who's built a hugely successful online life as the perfect tradwife. She bakes sourdough, she homeschools, she has loads of children, she lives in this beautiful farm in America, and you know it has it's just this beautiful idyllic place where she's got all her children and a lot of money essentially, milking goats and sharing this idyllic vision of family life, as if she is back in the time zone of the tradwife, which is in the 1850s. Then one morning she wakes up and she is back in 1855. And the book looks at that. And it's not really about time travel. So before you think she's time traveling, I'm not going to say any more than that. It looks at nostalgia. It looks at social media influencing. It looks at feminism and what does that really mean, and marriage, and the dangerous temptation to believe that perhaps the past is better or simpler or what we should be trying to live in. It's a fiction book, but it's also a bit psychological thriller as well. And it's also a bit farcical and a bit of a satirical look at life in the modern times with social media influencers. So for me, what did I think about this book? So some people loved it. Some people hated it. Some people fell somewhere in between. But there's a lot of discussion about this book. I felt like there were parts of it that I thought were excellent. I really thought were brilliant. And then there were other bits that I thought were a bit disappointing or could have been expanded or made better. It's one of those books where you don't really grow to like anybody. Interestingly, I generally like books where I like people. You don't feel a lot of sympathy or empathy for most of the people in this book either. I'm not sure it's designed to make you feel that way, but it's really about performance. It's about being performative, pretending that your marriage is okay, pretending that your motherhood is okay, actually performance in your faith as well, or performing online. So she performs as being somebody who's a tradwife in America who also has this deep faith in God. And there is a lid that's lifted on all of that. That's not a spoiler for me to say that, you know, it's not really as it seems, as you would expect. And I think, guess what we can take from this book is it really gets you to think about the damage of social media influencing and this curated life that's put online, and how we often look at it and think, you know, these are the lives people are living, when really there is a backstory that's very, very different. I recently read another book called People Like Her by, I think it's Ellery Lloyd. I didn't love that book, but there were some really good bits in it around this almost perfect imperfection that's put across by social media, really curated to look almost perfect, but not really perfect, and how that can cause people to feel that they are really coming up short. And this book is romanticizing perfect childhoods, perfect marriages, perfect careers, and simpler times. And I guess for me, I just think, how much of my life am I curating, or how much of my life am I giving an impression that things are different to how they are? I don't want to be that. I don't want to try and give out the impression of a life that I'm trying to sell to other people that I'm not really living myself. It's really good exploration of this whole tradwife idea and regardless of how people choose to live their lives, peddling a life that's not really true is kind of what's underneath this book, and how we can look back and think things were somehow better once upon a time, but actually every season and every generation has had different kinds of challenges. And yeah, you're not probably left with a great taste in the mouth around this book. It doesn't leave you feeling satisfied or happy, but it does ask some really good questions. So I reckon this is I really wanted to read it and I really wanted to finish it. Was it a brilliant book? Probably not. Hopefully that's something. Now, it says in my notes here that you would like books like The Yellow Face and Tomorrow if you read this book. But actually, I didn't really like either of those books, but I can see why those are being given as comparisons. So I guess for us as listening to this is, we don't want life to be a performance. We want life to be real, and we find purpose when we are living intentionally and with people in a real way. The key characters in this book are not doing real life with anybody. They're not even doing it in their private life. There is no real life for them. And that's kind of where you see the cracks and the problems coming about. Okay, next book is Theo of Golden, and that's written by Alan Levi. This book, I think you'll like this book if you enjoy books by Fredrik Backman, which I do. It's also a debut novel. It's written by somebody who is an older man who's writing for the first time. I think I read that he was a lawyer or a judge. I think it was originally self-published, and it was a real surprise publishing success. And the reason it was a surprise is not a lot happens in the book. It's quite slow. It's quite gentle. The main character is an older man. I've read a couple of books recently with old people as the main character, and I've loved it. This mysterious older man arrives in a town called Golden. In the local coffee shop, there are dozens of pencil portraits that have been done of local residents of the town. And he loves this. And this man, Theo, buys these portraits off the wall with the intention to return each of them to the person who is in the portrait. So he finds out who the person is on the portrait and gives them their portrait back. And when he sits with them and he gives them it, he asks them to tell him about themselves. So this is a gentle book. Like I said, there isn't a massive amount that happens. There's a bit that happens towards the end, but there's an unfolding. It's gentle, it's wise, it's comforting. And what I loved about it is that this guy plays this role in people's lives of both generosity and kindness, but the kindness that can come from a stranger, or the difference it makes when people speak encouragement into your life. I was with somebody yesterday actually, and they were telling me about an early mentor that they'd had and how this mentor had been so generous in encouragement. He'd said to him, "You're going to get loads of people that knock you down, so I'm just going to build you up. I'm going to tell you what you're good at, and I'm going to keep doing it every day whilst you're being mentored by me and in our workplace." And Theo kind of plays that role to so many people gently. And there's so much that people don't know about him. And that unfolds as you go through the book. This book leaves you feeling a real sense of faith in humankind and the fact that people can be generous and loving with no agenda. And it leaves you feeling good. It leaves you feeling like your heart has got attached to some lovely characters. So compared to the last book where you can feel there's some stuff in there that makes you feel quite sad and disappointed that's what humanity's like, Theo of Golden is a completely different. Generosity, community, purpose, legacy. It's a real book about legacy leaving and what you want your life to be about. I thought it was really beautiful. And for me, it's not... Fredrik Backman is also brilliant at creating characters that you really adore and they take you on a journey. This book isn't funny like his books are, but it has got such a lot of great contact in it. I said he was an older man who wrote it. He was in his 70s when this book became a phenomenon. So I think that's another really lovely story is if there's something in your heart to do, it doesn't matter whether you're 7, 17 or 70, it might be your time. And I'm so glad this book came out because I loved it. And for me, it's about just that small act of changing somebody's life through how you interact with them and those gentle little things. There is so much I could tell you about this book, but you need to read it for yourself. And I guess my takeaway is, when did I last make somebody feel truly seen and heard? When did I do something like Theo and make somebody feel loved, appreciated, and show that kind of generosity to somebody who's not going to repay me necessarily in any way? If you like this book, you will like A Man Called Uva, which my dad is currently reading. Now, my dad is a total non-reader. He's a self-confessed, I will only read non-fiction or biographies. And I was really sad about this. And because I love reading, I thought, I'd love to think of something that Dad might like to read. And I bought him A Man Called Uva, and he has absolutely loved it. So if you've got somebody in your life who isn't a reader, that's maybe a good idea to try for them. Okay. Next one was a big hit called The Wedding People by Alison Espach. I actually think this is a debut novel as well. That might be wrong, but I think it was. It was a huge hit, and I read it just before Christmas, and I think it was probably my favourite book of last year. Excellent, excellent book. It is farcical at the beginning. It is funny. It is... You are attached to these characters. It is deep. It is silly. Essentially, it sounds terrible, okay? But what happens in the book is that Phoebe Stone checks into a beautiful hotel in Newport, Rhode Island. She's just got divorced or separated from her husband, can't remember. And she's arrived on her own, and she's got a small suitcase, and she has a plan to quietly end her life at this hotel. So that sounds really sad. But the way this book deals with this subject is in a really gentle way. But unfortunately for Phoebe, she's arrived at this hotel and every other guest in the hotel is there for a week-long wedding extravaganza celebration. She's mistaken to be one of the guests and she finds herself entangled into the life of the bride and the groom and their wonderfully dysfunctional families. It's funny and warm and hopeful. So it's not at all about somebody choosing to end their life, actually. It's about how connections with individuals can completely change the course of your life. How actually you just don't know what life is going to throw at you. And in this book, Phoebe is in the darkest time of her life. There's grief, there's loneliness, there is such a lot of letting go that's taking place. But the book has a lightness and a humour about it that covers some of these topics so well. It's also about the loveliness of a friendship with somebody who's nothing like you, an unexpected friend that you don't know you're going to make, and how your lives can become intertangled with one another, or entangled, to use a real word. And I did find it really sad at times, but I did also laugh out loud at this book, and I read it really quickly. I've recommended it to a few friends, and everyone I've recommended it to has read it quickly, and they've enjoyed it. And I think the other thing about this is we never really know what else is going on in someone else's life. This whole episode, again, there is a backstory for so many people at this wedding that is very different to the life they're presenting. And again, that's a really important takeaway from this book. And how things can be quite inconvenient. And Phoebe turning up as a guest who's not invited to the wedding, who's actually in a very dark place, is rather inconvenient for the bride and groom. This is not quite what the bride wanted, but something really amazing comes from it. So I loved it. I really loved it. And I think it's really important to remember that everyone is fighting a battle that you don't know they are. And there's things going on in people's lives that we know nothing about. Again, it's very much in my ilk of kind of book. And I guess a question for us to think about in this is, have strangers ever changed the direction of our lives without realising it? I would say that loads of people have altered the direction of my life who might not be right in a group, like conversations with people that have led to conversations with someone else. I do a lot of speaking work for an organisation which I've actually won their Speaker of the Year award a couple of years ago, but I was first introduced to that organisation by a pretty much stranger who connected me to somebody else. Those conversations with strangers who are willing to open doors for you can completely alter the direction of your life. And I want to be somebody who does that for others too. So how can we alter the direction of people's lives for the good? That book is a lovely examination of that. Okay, next one. Oh my goodness. I loved this book. I am a 5-star for this book too. The Names by Florence Knapp. It's won lots of awards, I think. I think she's been shortlisted. I think she's won loads of things. If you haven't read this book, you should read it. Anybody, any age, this is an excellent everybody kind of book. I love the concept. The concept is essentially that your name is just a single word, but what about it? What about if it changes everything about you? So basically, there is a baby born at the beginning of the book, and 3 different names are considered for this baby. One is the choice of the father, one is the choice of the mother, and one is the choice of the big sister. I'm not going to give you too much more context to this and to why they've got different choices and what those names represent, but essentially those names represent a really different trajectory for this child's life. And as you read those early chapters, it unfolds that there's a trajectory that's different with these 3 names. So the way the book is structured is that it follows this child's life. Each chapter is named after the different name. So the 3 names, I actually can't even remember them. It's Gordon, Bear, and maybe Nathan. I think that's wrong. There are 3 names. And each of the chapters go round in that order. So you follow his life for those 3 chapters, then you follow his life again for those 3 chapters to see how does his life diverge, what happens to him because of the choice of a name. It's not really about the name. It's about the decision-making behind the name. It's about where his mother's decision-making is going based on the name that she gives this child. And it's just so powerful in seeing that, the impact that other people's decisions in our childhood, especially in our family of origin, can have on our life. But then also a sense of hope underneath all of that runs through this book. I will say that this book shows us that decisions have large consequences, and I will also say that this book is really hard at times. So trigger warning, the last book I mentioned covers suicide, but does it in a way that is quite gentle, and it's over very early in the book, and the suicide doesn't take place, I will tell you that. This book covers domestic abuse, and that doesn't make it easy to read at times. It's hard, but I think it's a very good representation of that difficult scenario. So I'm just telling you that because I wouldn't want anyone to read that book for which that would be a particularly difficult topic to read. And I think it also is a story of not just the central character, but other characters, that children become what we tell them. What are we telling our children? Those of us who are parents, they become what we tell them. They become the environment that they experience. And those things can change. We can redeem difficult starts in life. Of course we can. But children do pick up what we tell them they are. How much of our life is choice? How much of our life is chance? Would we be who we were? It's a really good book for discussion. It's a great book club book, I think, because there's so much in it. And a really good question that comes out of this book is, what tiny decision changed the course of your life? I wonder what you would think of if I asked you that question. For me, when I was a little girl, when I was about 8 years old, no, probably younger than that, maybe even 7, I went to a tiny primary school. And my birthday's September the 15th, if you want to send me a card. And so therefore I was in a tiny primary school with 3 teachers only, and I was old in my year, and I was, I guess, quite academically capable. I was the youngest of 3 children. I was desperate to learn. And when I was about 7 or 8, my teacher felt, Mrs. Powell, that I should go up with the year above me. So I should essentially go from year 3 straight to year 5, which would mean that I would become the youngest child in the class overnight. And she talked to my parents about this, and I remember seeing an ed psych for a few weeks. He would come to school and he would do tests with me, and intelligence tests and social capacity tests, and he basically built a report on me that he gave to Worcestershire County Council. I've read it, I've got it upstairs in the loft somewhere, recommending that I should go from year 3 to year 5. That was a big decision for my parents that essentially totally changed the course of my life. And I look back at that and I think my whole life would have looked different. There were some things that were really hard about it. I'm not going to lie. I probably had imposter syndrome because of it forever. I had to keep up. I had to earn my place there. Whereas if I'd been in my year, I would have been the oldest. I would have not had to prove my grades. Everybody knew. Some of my friendships were affected. but also meant that maybe I might not have met my husband had I not moved up a school year, because our lives would not have collided at the moment they did when I went to university. So all in all, I kind of think it was probably the right thing. But that decision, you'll have your own stories, completely changed the direction of my life. And it wasn't my decision. I had nothing to do with it. Okay, next one. I read Whistler by Ann Patchett. I actually listened to Whistler by Ann Patchett. First of all, why has nobody mentioned Ann Patchett to me ever before? It seems she's prolific, and I think she's probably somebody who I'm going to like. Nobody's ever suggested I read anything by her before. And I enjoyed this book. I'm not sure it's a 5-star for me. It's probably a 4-star, but to be fair on it, I listened to it and I didn't read it. Some of it I felt was a little bit sickly sweet, even for me. I like nice endings, but there was a bit of it that felt a little bit saccharine, a little bit throughout it, a little bit unrealistic. But I enjoyed it. It's about a woman called Daphne who's in her 50s, and she goes to an art museum one morning and she spots somebody that she hasn't laid eyes on for 40 years. And it's her former stepfather, Eddie. And she had loved this stepfather, Eddie. And that encounter reconnects them. And then you go on this exploration of the years of her childhood and what happened after it, and her love for her stepfather and the reconnection that she makes. Not a lot happens in this book, but it's a really emotional book, and it's actually about family. It's about the things that we don't know. It's about the decisions people make, the poor decisions people make, the loss of people in our life, that we can lose people who haven't died, and the impact that has on us. Her sister is a therapist, and that's a really interesting angle of how they uncover some of the sort of lessons of their childhood and the things they experienced and they didn't realise each other were experiencing. And how this stepfather had left such a mark on her life, even though he left her life. I thought that was one of the things I took away from this, that actually people aren't always in our life forever, but they can leave such a mark and have quietly shape who we are. And I just thought it was a lovely book. Not probably my favourite book I've read of late, but I would definitely recommend it as a read. Okay, next one. Are we still going? Because I'm hoping this is useful for you. The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. I'm sure loads of you have read this and I'm late to the party. I loved this book so much. It's another brilliant central character who is an older person. I think she's in her 70s. She might be in her 80s. I can't remember. It follows somebody called Sybil Van Antwerp. And Sybil Van Antwerp is the key character in this book, but the whole book is told through letters or emails. Hence the name, The Correspondent. The story unfolds, and quite a bit happens in this book, but it's all through letters, the responses that she gets, conversations between people, Sybil's responses to them. It's about language. It's about writing letters. It's about the power of a letter. It's about the power of communicating and being able to say what you want to say, and actually how some of these characters don't say what they needed to say. They don't say it at the right time. They say it too late, or they never say it at all. And Sybil is getting older, and it's also about the way she sees herself and some of the loss she's experiencing physically, and also in her life, but also how life can bring unexpected extra chapters that you don't expect in your life at the most inopportune times or when you're not expecting it. But it's a lovely read because of the fact it's told through letters. And I remember reading years ago, what's it called now? The Literary Society, the Guernsey Potato Peel. I think it's called the Guernsey Potato Peel and Literacy Society. I think it's called something like that. And that book's told in letters too, and I loved it. So if you enjoy that kind of format, or you want to give a different format a go, I think it's brilliant. And you hear so much in the letters, and there's no narrator. I mean, it's so clever that you are fully aware of the different characters by all the little clues we're given, the structure of the letters, even the way somebody does their email headers. There's so much that you pick up about who these characters are, and there is no narrator to fill in any of those gaps for you. There's no show not tell. Well, there is. It's all show not tell, but it's done through the format of letter with no kind of you don't get the scene that they're in at all, because there's none of that that happening. So I so recommend it to you. And I it made me think about writing letters. It made me think I want to write more letters and send more cards, and that it's a lost art. Even just sending texts, maybe, but just ones to tell people what you think. But who would you want to write a letter to? You know, it made me think, who would I like to pen some thoughts to and take that time to really explain myself to them in a way that we don't always in a phone call or in a conversation, because we're interrupting each other. A letter is a one-way expression of your feelings. And I've sent a couple of letters in the past I've written a couple of letters in the past that I've never sent, for my own like cathartic sort of process of letting things go, and then, you know, binned it. And the power of a letter is so important. So I loved it. Quick one, You Are Here by David Nicholls, not a new one. David Nicholls has written One Fine Day. I just loved this little book. It was about two people who, through a group of friends, meet on a walk. It's about a walk across somewhere in the north, can't even remember. They're in their 30s. They're romantically unattached, and it's about some of the sort of connection they make with one another. It's funny. It's a nice book, you know. I really enjoyed it. I liked the characters and I was on their side, which again is quite a David Nicholls way to write. And I liked the fact that because they were walking, their conversations were better. My husband and I will often go for a walk with the dog, and it's often those times where we have deeper conversations than when we're at home. And I know some people have started to do walking coaching, where they meet one-to-one with their teams, the people in their team or the person they're coaching, and they walk while they do it, because it's something about the walking that enables people to process differently and talk differently. And this book is a walk. So I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. And it's funny and it's warm. If you just want to feel good and a little bit of romance, then I would go for this book. Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. Never read anything by her before. I read this book and thought it was a bit of a slow start, wasn't sure what I was going to think of it, but two parts of this book made me sob publicly. One of them was on an aeroplane. As I was finishing the book, I sobbed. Actually, was it the end or was it another section? Two parts really made me cry in public, and that's quite special when a book can do that. It's set on a remote island, and there's a grieving family on this island who live together. They are there because of the work that they are involved with, but really there aren't many inhabitants on this remote island. And their life becomes entwined with a mysterious woman who essentially washes up on shore after a storm. Who is this woman? Why is she there? What is she doing here? How are our lives entwining? Is she safe? What's going on? There's a whole load going on in these characters. I really enjoyed it. It's a bit different to some of the stuff I'd read. There's also like an environmental theme to this book and about what we're doing to the world. That was interesting for me because I probably wouldn't normally read a book that had those themes, if I'm completely honest. But the fact it was in there was really good, a really good angle. I've bought this for a friend for her birthday, and I'd be interested to see what she thinks of it. But yeah. There's also the generational element in this around what we inherit from our families, what we inherit from our parents. All of that is something that comes through this book. I honestly really enjoyed this. And like I said, it was a bit of a difference for me. And I guess a question from this one, because I've tried to weave in some questions here. What are we trying to leave in a better place than we found it? So there we are. Those are the books I'm going to leave you with today. Most of those, there was a few that I didn't like. I'm just going to mention a couple that I didn't love. Catherine Newman's books. She wrote Wreck and she wrote We All Want Impossible Things. On paper, I should have loved these books. It's about middle-aged women who are caring for teenagers and young adults and ageing parents. I really did not enjoy these books. I found them to be indulgent. I found them to be... what's the word I'm looking for? Privileged, selfish. And I did not relate to the character at all. Sorry if you did, but I just did not relate to the central character and thought, I really hope I'm not like that. I didn't enjoy them. Wreck is about the loss of her mother, and I'd just lost my mother, and it didn't move me at all. There was a tiny bit that moved me, but not really. It was. I think there's a loss of somebody else. I can't even remember, but it was about grief at a time when I was really grieving, and it did not move me. And I'm easily moved. So those books I didn't love. I thought Intermezzo by Sally Rooney was okay or good, but again, not really likeable characters, but good. On reflection, probably better than I thought it was at the time. I read The Maidens. By Alex somebody, can't remember his name. That was okay. So those were all in the okay category. A bit ridiculous is probably what I'd say as my one-word summary of those. So those are not recommends. I'd love to know if you enjoyed them. I love hearing when people feel differently because it challenges me to think differently. I'm going to leave you with a quote, which is a quote inside a book that I'm currently reading, which is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. And this is not her quote. She's quoting somebody else. So this is a bit meta. I'm quoting a quote in a book that's not from her own book. In reality, every reader, while he is reading, is the reader of his own self. The writer's work is merely a kind of optical instrument which he offers to the reader to permit him to discern what, without the book, he would perhaps never have seen in himself. The reader's recognition in his own self of what the book says is the proof of its truth. And that's Marcel Proust. I thought that's so true. When I read, I feel like I learn about myself. I learn about things about myself that I don't realise. I attach myself to the human story, which is loss and hope and joy and love and humour. And I find myself in those books. And I guess it's when I can't find myself or I find it difficult, that's when a book is harder to reach me. But I hope you enjoyed that fast kind of foray through the books that I've just recently been reading. I'll make sure they're all in the show notes as well so you can find them. I would also love you to give me some recommends because I'm always on the lookout for something to read. Happy summer, everyone.